The regular meeting of the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee will now begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Willie Bridges, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Thor Adam.
Present.
Zachariah Aiden. Zachariah Aiden. Jonathan Ahn.
Present.
Jocelyn Beard.
Present.
Bernstein.
Here.
Vice Chair Willie Bridges.
Present.
James Brown. James Brown. Luke Cunningham.
Here.
Engel.
Present.
Eamon Gallagher.
Present.
Liam Graves.
Present.
Kai Goodmisted. Kai Goodmisted. Risa Hustad.
Present.
Katie Jones.
Here.
Zinka.
Here.
Richard LaRoe.
Here.
Erica Mouter.
Here.
Dan McConnell.
Here.
Jake McCormick.
Here.
Dan Miller.
Present.
George is out. Todd Schumann.
Here.
Chair Jeff Strand.
I'm present.
Katrina Stratton.
Here.
Beth Toso.
Here.
Eric Wan.
Present.
That's 22 members present.
We have a quorum. Thank you. With that, we'll proceed to our agenda, a copy which was posted for public access to the city legislation informational management system, which is available at lims.minneapolis.minnesota.gov. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda and accept. Pardon me?
The agenda.
Is there a second? Who said that?
Eric Klein, move the motion.
Second?
Second, Bernstein.
Just to be clear, is this for the agenda and minutes, or I think we should do
Agenda
these
and
together?
the minutes. Oh, that's correct, sorry. And the minutes. Is there a discussion or amendment to the agenda and minutes? So hearing none, clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Thor Adam.
Aye.
Zachariah Aiden.
Aye.
Jonathan Ahn.
Aye.
Jocelyn Beard.
Aye.
John Bernstein.
Aye.
Vice Chair Willie Bridges.
Aye.
James Brown. Luke Cunningham.
Aye.
Scott Engel.
Aye.
Eamon Gallagher.
Aye.
William Graves.
Aye.
Kai Goodman.
Aye, I am here also.
Risa Hustad.
Aye.
Katie Jones.
Aye.
Zinka.
Aye.
LaRoe.
Aye.
Erica Mouter.
Aye.
Dan McConnell.
Aye.
Jake McCormick.
Aye.
Dan Miller.
Aye.
Who's out? Todd Schumann.
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
Katrina Stratton.
Aye.
Beth Toso.
Aye.
Eric Wan.
Aye.
That's 24 ayes.
And so we will proceed with the agenda. Ready to start the capital budget request, the Q&A session. Number 2, the public works traffic. They're the first up. Are they here, Neil?
I believe they are here.
Yes, we're all here.
Good afternoon. Welcome. And would you proceed your name and start the conversation?
This
Shall
is
I
Ryan
start?
Anderson.
Oh, go on then,
Yeah,
Ryan.
Neil, I'm just curious if are we going to go in order each number or tackle these all at once? Joe Lauren will be our first one up, I think.
So this is more geared as like a Q&A session. So if there's if members have like particular questions for any of the traffic CBRs, I think this is like the space for people to answer those. So I don't know if you just want to like briefly summarize your program and then people can just ask some questions.
Sure, that sounds good. Maybe we'll just introduce the traffic staff first, and then we'll open it up for questions. So I'm Ryan Anderson, I'm a traffic engineer with the city, and I'm working on the TR10, TR21, TR22, and the TR25 programs.
Hi, Joe Lauren here, also with Public Works Traffic, Streetlight Project Manager. The programs that I'm working on specifically are the TR8, which is the Parkway one, TR11, which is Streetlight Renovation, and TR24, which is the Pedestrian Streetlight Corridor program.
Hi, my name's Mark Reed, Project Manager in Parking. Here to answer any questions on project reference PK004, the ongoing major maintenance of parking ramps. This project comprises mostly of elevator modernizations, condenser replacements, drainage mitigation issues, and skyway roof repairs.
And there's a couple others of us here who won't be presenting, but we're here for questions. I'm Alan Klugman, one of the traffic engineers with Traffic and Parking Services.
Good afternoon, Steve Malsing, Traffic Operations Engineer with Traffic and Parking Services. So just here to answer any questions that might come my way. Thanks.
Yeah, Bill Prince, Traffic Signal and Lighting Construction Engineer.
Okay. Eric and then John.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I just have a sort of an overarching question here. In going through your CBRs, I'll just pick one example. For example, with the street lights, your pattern, your annual streetlight activity is in the double digits, yet your long-term need is 600 to replace 600 such streetlights. I mean, that's 20 years. So in general, are you looking for a huge infusion of funds at some point to be able to get to what I consider to be backlogs? And is that infusion of funds going to be coming in any way from the large sums of federal dollars coming in for infrastructure? In other words, an alternative funding source other than the city itself? And that would be my general question. It's a budget question and not a technical question.
There's a couple different, Joe Lauren here, a couple different of streetlight programs. So the Parkway one and the Renovation one are to repair and replace existing lighting. So the ones that are in the poorest condition, to replace them. And then the Pedestrian Streetlight Corridor is to install new city metal pole lights, where it's currently an Excel Energy wood pole system. So that's building out the pedestrian streetlight corridor network. So kind of a few different buckets of street lighting projects. But we, I would say to accelerate any of those programs, there's some flexibility. So additional funding could be used to speed up that process, to either improve the overall average condition of the existing assets, or to construct the pedestrian corridor network at a faster rate to completely build it, which is not currently completely built out. So there's some flexibility if federal dollars are approved and appropriate to to use towards those projects and programs. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I should have been more specific. What the 30 versus 600 in your backlog is specifically for the Parkway as an example. But yeah, if there are plans to access the federal infrastructure funds, which would mean that we don't have to spend as much of the city funds, that would be good news. But it's important for us to know that there'll be funds freed up to do other capital investment projects should the federal infrastructure dollars come through. So thank you.
John?
Thanks. So I have two questions. The first is a technical question, and this might be a question for finance staff. Two of these projects, two of these CBRs, TR10 and 2R22, are missing a whole bunch of information. The only data that's in there is the funding information. All of the answers to the questions are not there, at least when I pull them down. And I've tried a couple times to see if it was a technical thing on my end, and I don't think it is. I don't know if anybody else has experienced the same thing. I saw Matt's head nodding and Scott's. Yeah, so I don't know if that's traffic or just a tech thing or what, but we've got no information other than the funding request for TR10 and TR22. So we need to have that resolved. So that's the first point. Second one I wanted to ask is about outstanding authorizations. You only have a couple of them, and most of them look like they match the 2022 request. So I'm wondering if all that is the money that you've got for 2022 that you haven't yet spent. And if that's the case, that's another thing we should address, finance staff. We don't need to know if they haven't spent $22 yet. That's not a reasonable thing, right? We're only in April. Of course, they haven't spent those dollars. We want to know if there's dollars they haven't spent that are predate the current year. Thanks.
So for the at least for the CBRs, I can look into and figure out why those aren't pulling through. I believe they were completed, so that might just be like a issue on our end. So I can check that out. And then for the authorizations, that was the question that we had on the CBR when we sent in January. So and maybe that needs to be reworded for next year, so we can capture like the information that I think we might have been capturing before. So that's something to improve on for next year.
So for traffic staff, can you just confirm that those outstanding authorizations are in fact $22 and not previous to $22?
Traffic staff? Are you there, traffic staff?
Yeah, I contemplate. I'm not sure I fully grasp the question. I believe they're current year dollars. But if you want to explain that one more time to see if it changes our answer here.
So what we're looking to see is if there is money that's been authorized for a project that has not yet been spent, that does not include the dollars that were authorized for the current year, 2022.
I know in the past, finance had filled in some previous, like unspent. There is a question about that, and we provided an answer, I think on the TR 21 program specifically.
Right. That's what I'm looking
helpful?
for clarification on. They've changed that answer, so it's a little bit less clear. It used to say unspent balances. I mean, I guess technically the 2022 dollars are unspent balances. I don't want to chew up too much time on this. I'll put this in email form and have somebody in finance forward it on to you guys, and we'll see if we can get it clarified.
Thanks,
Okay.
John.
Yep, thank you.
Katie? Katie, you're muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I have three areas or topic areas of questions. The first one is for lighting. Just noting that there's been a number of like poles going up in neighborhoods, and I think they're for internet or something like that. Have we been looking into the ability to leverage the new poles that we're putting in for these other utility type services? So that's my first question.
Okay, great. Joe Lauren here again. Yeah, if it's a pole going in the right of way, it does not have a street light on it. It's most likely I'll say probably a communications pole. Without examples in front of me, I can't say for sure, but we do offer and also recommend the opportunity to install a new streetlight and an antenna at the same time, if that can be coordinated. So all the cell providers are aware of this option. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis of looking at the intersection of the location and seeing if that pole can be combined to reduce the number of pieces of infrastructure in the right of way. And so in some cases it may replace an existing wood pole light or something like that. So it is an option and recommended. However, there are some, we don't have the ability to firmly require that as part of following state statute. So at this point, it's a strong recommendation. We try to do it to keep the right-of-way space less cluttered, but we don't have full control of that decision within traffic.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. On the like TR 021, there's a part in there about video detection. And I know if that's for traffic flow, just curious on the authorization or like the authority that we have over that. It was my understanding that there was state law that preempted us from using video of any kind for traffic. Could anyone explain that?
Yeah, this is Ryan Anderson. So the video detection is used to place the call in a controller. It is not an enforcement camera. I think what you're referring to is the state statutes related to like speed enforcement or red light enforcement, just not the purpose of those cameras.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And then the last area is also around traffic signals. And I've brought this up before, like what, I guess, piloting or testing does our staff do regarding, you know, safety and flow of people that are not in cars. So I'm thinking around, you know, bicycles there. We now have lights specific to bicycles, but the timing I know in like Washington has been funky. How are there formal tests or pilots that the city does and that we're taking lessons from to make sure those are optimized as well?
Hey, Katie, good afternoon. I'll jump in. Alan Klugman here. The short answer is yes. 820 signals in the city, and we're constantly looking at new techniques, new operational strategies. We very much follow the city hierarchy with words like complete streets framework, pedestrians and bicyclists, transit, of course, you know, vision, zero, and safety. So we've done a number of things, everything from turning signals to automatic pedestrian indications to what we call leading pedestrian intervals, where we put the ped walk up first. We now have about 25, I believe, approximately 25 or more bike signals. I think we're one of the leading cities in the nation for that. So I think the short answer is yes. We've also looked at things like geometric treatments, everything from plastic bollards that are more temporary to, you know, concrete bump outs that are obviously permanent. So yeah, we're continually reassessing how we both design and build and operate signals with a lens towards safety and multimodal service. So I think, yeah, I think we put a lot of energy to that. Maybe one more thing I'll say is a lot we do with Metro Transit as well, with both buses and LRT. We were recently lauded by Metro Transit LRT through their conversations with their peer colleagues operating transit systems. They say we're literally one of the leading agencies for integration of street traffic signals with the railroad signals and the light rail signals. So we really, really do try to match the city modal priorities with our traffic signal design and operation.
That's awesome to hear. And I'll just throw out again, I'd love to see a pilot on near side intersection signals. Like as we're doing, you know, as we're testing more and more, I think we need more data on that, and I'd love to see one here in Minneapolis. So
okay, so we may have to talk more about that. I know you brought it up in past years, Katie, and you know, with our Vision Zero program and multiple things we're testing, you know, I'll just let you know we are testing lots of things, so we'll keep that under consideration. But I think you kind of know our initial position on that is that it's probably not a treatment that's at the top of our list to implement right now.
We'll keep talking. Thanks.
Fair enough, Katie. Okay, thank you.
Rich?
Hi, to reiterate John's point, PK04, TR22, TR10, TR99, and TR25 are all missing any data. So nothing to go on there. I had a question about rankings. I see for many of these CBRs, for example, TR22 shows a ranking of 1 of 10, but TR10 shows, I'm sorry, TR99 shows a ranking of something like 5 of 60. And some of them are 12 and some of them are 60. I'm trying to get a clear understanding of which projects are being grouped together and how are these getting ranked relative to each other. Or is it possible that has not been updated for some time?
Usually with TPP, my understanding is, I don't know if Neil, if you know differently, but my understanding is TPP provides the internal ranking of those, all the public works programs.
I don't know the answer to that. I can, oh, I'm sorry. I can follow up with them what their how they rank it. So I'm not sure if this is like, I just went and I republished TR10 to TR25, and you're right, those look like they hadn't just been updated, but there is information in them. And I'll just highlight that if when you guys are going through the CBRs and you see something that like is clearly, if you see any issues, just like email me and let me know, and then I could go and republish them. There's 140 of these, so we're trying to make sure we have the links active and everything. So we've got a few already, but yeah, if you notice anything like that, we can go back and republish and make sure that the information's there. But I can check with TPP and see what they're what all they're encompassing within their project priorities or their rankings.
Who is TPP?
They are in Public Works Transportation Planning Programming.
Okay, and do they cover everything that's under Public Works, or everything besides street paving, or what's the breakout there?
Within them, they have paving, they have traffic signals, they have. I'm trying to think what else is included in there. They have a. I don't know if I have the whole list off the top of my head, but they do quite a bit of programming within Public Works.
So I'm looking at the CBR homepage. We have bike, bridges, fleet, parking, sidewalks, storm sewers, traffic and lighting, water, and paving. For each of those subsections, a relative ranking of all of the current CBRs. Is that reasonable? Is that something we would expect here?
I'm not comfortable answering that right now. I can go get you an answer of like what is included within their priority or their project priority rankings. But I don't want to give you the wrong answer right now.
Anybody else on the team know what I'm asking for?
Yeah, this is John Bernstein. I'll just jump in quick. I think that my recollection is the way that's been done in the past is they've been ranked within each area, right? Because traffic, you'd have to ask the director of the department or something like that if we're going to ask them to rank traffic against paving against something else, because now you're talking about across a bunch of different departments in Public Works. You can argue that each set of information would be interesting. That might be a lot of work to ask them to do, I think, and that's only one input that we use. So I would say that relative to each category is good enough. Like what's their highest priority water project? What's their highest priority traffic project? We don't need to know how water goes against traffic and that kind of thing. That's probably asking a little too much of them, would be my thought.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Anything else, Rich?
Sorry?
Anything else?
Yeah, just to reiterate that currently the rankings they're mixed up. Some of them are clearly ranking against the entire set. Others are only ranking within the group. So I think there's more than just a clarification we're asking for. We're actually asking for some redo and reclassification so that we're getting what John just described, a precise ranking of each project within each subsection.
You know, is that something that you can look at and see?
I can go talk to those folks. Well, Amelia, it looks like you're about to chime in.
I'm just wondering, since we have people here today from traffic, water, and sewer, if you guys could clarify your priority for each of your individual projects, that would be extremely helpful. Also, just a norm setting thing that we won't have to do for too much longer, but if folks that are talking could turn your video cameras on, if that's at all possible, it helps our flow of communication. As you can see, there's lots of people that want to ask questions, and it's harder for us to see what's going on without the cameras on. So I would just open the floor for Public Works folks to share anything that you have on those two good questions.
Public Works, anything?
This is Ryan Anderson. So we had not prepared our internal ranking, as I believe in past years it was a ranking that our planning group had put together. So we can get back to you with that.
Okay, Rich, anything? Is that it? Can't hear you. You're muted, Rich.
All done, thank you.
Okay, Scott?
Yeah, I have two questions. One is about PKJ 004, the off-street parking. This one really frustrates me. The CBR lacks a lot of information. The presentation, the video had a little more detail, but this thing, last year there was more detail about the elevator repairs and a little bit about which ramps were being improved. This has almost no information. I think I expressed this concern last year that this parking thing feels like a just a rubber stamp, and there's this vague notion that that there's money there because the parking it's a business, it creates revenue and it funds the maintenance. But this CBR does not even acknowledge the fact that there's been a pandemic for the last 2 years and it's continuing on, and that these giant facilities that require millions of dollars in maintenance every year, they're probably quite empty or somewhat empty, or I don't know, like we have vague notions. It looks like in the out years, you guys are proposing to go back to $5 million a year. We've been told through other projects that we've got 30 years into the future of doing pedestrian ramps. We've got brown water coming out of people's faucets, and it's going to be decades and decades before we can address those. Yet we've got $5 million a year to maintain these, I'm assuming, relatively empty facilities. And it seems that working from home is going to be more of a thing, and that maybe some of these things are not necessary. I'm not opposed to parking. I'm not opposed to a municipal parking ramp, but I feel like this CBR does not explain what's going on in the city. We should at least know how much the off-street parking facilities generate, just as a top line number. So I think this is more of a question, but can you do better next year? I feel like I made this comment last year and it got worse.
Okay, this is Mark here. Yep, I hear what you're saying about the lack of information. You're right, it is in the presentation. There are slides there on all the parts of the project that we'd like to do and the years that we would like to do them in. As far as the pandemic goes, I agree with you. There isn't any information in there, and probably trying to explain how the pandemic has hit the ramps is probably too complicated for this session. But yes, we did take a dive in revenue and use of the ramps, and it is now slowly starting to come back. If you want more figures, I can get them to you.
I think we want more information in the CBRs, or at least I do, and not less. I think my other question is for Alan Klugman. I've been kind of frustrated with the city has just finally come out after 30 years with a Americans with Disabilities Act ADA transition plan. And what it found is that the city is woefully behind on identifying and then removing accessibility barriers. And you talked about APS signals. The city, I'm curious to know whether it would make sense to create its own CBR for APS signals. So then there would be more of a focus on it, or at least a separate CBR for ADA improvements. It feels like the urgency has not increased despite the fact that this ADA transition plan has come out. Public Works doesn't seem to increase the funding for any of these things. My understanding from the CBR is that, or from the ADA transition plan, that only 20% of intersections have the APS signals. When can we expect, Alan, can we expect that all the intersections might have it?
Okay, Scott, so a couple comments there that kind of thread together with your questions and statements. Quickly, let's talk about that 20% figure. We're actually at about 40%, maybe a little bit north of 40%, 41, 42, something like that. So of our 800 plus signals, we have about 320 to 350 are now equipped with APS, and we've made a really concerted effort the past 5 to 10 years to address those. So just for statistics, we're about 40% have of our signals intersections have the full ADA ramps and the new modern accessible pedestrian signals, the talking signals for those who don't know that term, APS. To your bigger question about ADA transition and funding, I guess that's probably a larger public works question, a little bit hard for maybe the traffic group to speak directly to that. I would say we've merged quite well with the ADA transition plan, which I believe in round numbers has about a 20-year time frame for addressing the ADA ramps. What we've done, Scott, is somewhat in line with that. We've lined up our traffic budget and traffic funding capital budget tier 21 to rebuild signals with an emphasis on the ones that are older and therefore would need the APS. So we've largely addressed the APS compliance challenge through our overall rebuilding of signals. Just a couple comments just for information. With most of our older signals that don't have APS, it's a rather challenging effort to just put in the APS and meet all the current standards. And it kind of becomes almost like the straw that broke the camel's back. If you try to add the ramps, you're probably moving poles around to hit the new geometry. If you put in APS, you probably have to replace things because of the spacing and whatnot, slopes of the sidewalk and ramps. And kind of bottom line, it's usually the trigger to rebuild entire signals. So we've been doing most of our APS upgrades through a rather aggressive campaign to rebuild signals. And I'll just say this quickly, both with our own internal funding, tier 21 or also tier 22, sometimes signals are rebuilt from a safety lens. And then also where we've allocated funds to match partner projects like a MnDOT or county, or even say Southwest LRT project that's rebuilding the signal. And then we do our share and upgrade the APS. So I think what I'm saying to you guys, we feel we've made very, very strong progress the last 5 to 10 years. And if you look at our current budgeting and our work program, we're thinking about 20 years to have basically all new modern signals with APS.
Another 20 years. So
20 years from now, yeah.
Yeah, so that's like a 50-year period of time since the ADA was passed.
Yeah, I can't dispute your comment on the years. And again, I don't challenge your notion that it might be beneficial for the city to have a public works wide or citywide ADA funding mechanism or program. It's not one that we have in traffic, so we use the resources we have. And again, tier 21 upgrade signals, tier 22, which is overall safety, but many signals get done within that. And then with our partner agency projects where we share, those are the means that we have at our disposal to address the ADA situation and specifically the APS. So, so we've addressed those, I'd say, as ambitiously as we can with our funding.
That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. Matt?
Hey there. So I have a question about the LED conversions that I believe are part of TR 11, the city streetlight renovation. So my understanding is that project contains both street pole fixes and LED conversions, existing poles. And I've just been sort of eagerly anticipating this LED rollout. I know that it started several years ago, but there's still a lot of districts that don't have these LED conversions happening yet, especially in places where I really think they could benefit not just from the energy savings perspective, but from just better lighting, contributing to a better environment for business and everything else, community safety, all of that. So Eric identified, I think, in his question that, you know, the numbers in the CBR show that there's it's going to take a long time to, you know, 30 years maybe to fix all the street lights and street poles. I'm wondering if I couldn't find any numbers, but I'm wondering if there's an estimate of how long LED conversion will take at the rates that are currently being done or being requested. And I also noticed in this activity there is, or in this project, there is increased funding in the budget request compared to current year. I'm wondering if that increased funding is primarily going to street pole renovation or LED conversion or both. Kind of how will this request help with the project to increase LED conversions and get us to 100%?
Hi, Matt and Joe here. Thank you for the question. Yeah, we have about 20,000 city-owned, maintained streetlights in the city, and they kind of fall into two buckets. We'll say the high-level poles that are kind of 30 foot and taller, and then kind of the low-level poles, which are the more decorative type. And so about 7,000 are the high level and about 13,000 the low level. So we start with the high level ones first. They're less expensive, and you get because they use more electricity to start. Then you get a quicker payback on those. So we're still working through those high level fixture conversions. And then once we finish that, we'll shift over to the low level lights, which use less electricity and are more expensive because due to their decorative nature, they're kind of more of an aesthetic type of pole as well. So that will take longer to go through those 13,000 approximately low level streetlights to convert those. But yeah, as the funding is increased, that will allow us to accelerate the LED conversion. You know, it's kind of a bit of a balance between LED conversion and pole conditions. We do streetlight audit, condition, and inspection approximately every 5 years. And so every 5 years, we have a refresh of the condition of the system. And so if when we have those updated numbers, we fix and repair and replace the assets and infrastructure based on that information and data we receive. So those are usually a little more urgent. If we have the information that their condition is very poor, we'll replace those, but we do continually replace the LED. But if for some reason some of the poles conditions accelerate to be the condition to be more poor than anticipated, we may have to catch up a little bit with that and then bounce back to LED. So it's a little bit of a balance, but yeah, as we continue on, 20,000 lights takes a while and the cost is very high. And so again, there's some flexibility, so increased funding, we would be able to do more conversions and adjust accordingly if that's to occur.
So just a quick follow-up, do you think it's fair, I mean, given that we're still working on those first 7,000 out of the full 20,000, is it another decade, another 2 decades likely at current rates to get to completion of this LED conversion?
We are still in the first 7,000. We could calculate out, you know, we know the approximate cost to convert each type of fixture. We could calculate that out to get the full number, and then, you know, make some assumptions on how much the funding is per year and get an estimate ballpark of how many years that would be. And that's assuming that we don't have kind of an unexpected, you know, spike of pole condition that we have to address or things like that. So we could calculate that out. I don't have those exact numbers in front of me, but yeah, we could do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
2 more questions, then we move on to storm and sewer. Ann, John, and then Eric.
Thank you for your time. I just have one quick comment and one question. So my one comment is on PK004, and I think I wanted to just echo Scott's comments and sentiments on our parking systems. I mean, I fully understand that there is a repair and maintenance and modernization needs for our off-street parking facilities that city owns and maintains. But at the same time, we evaluate the long-range improvement projects. I think a conversation needs to be had on the long-term viabilities of our municipal parking services to see if there's a long-term viability or the financial sustainability of maintaining this current level of capacity to provide a city-owned off-street parking services. So I would like to just mention that so we can have those conversations. My other question is mostly on just throughout the list of projects, maybe this is just because of the differences between the budget request and the adopted budget in the previous years, or a different way of how we categorize the dollars. But I noticed a lot of increases in design and project management cost and general overhead costs throughout several projects. And I was hoping to hear a little more about how those numbers are calculated, or just shed a little more light on how those dollars are going to be used, say if they're going to fund additional staff time or whatnot.
Any response?
So Ryan, you want to start, and then maybe I can fill in some other commentary on those budgets?
Well, actually, Alan, why don't you go first and I'll fill in where we would like. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I think, Jonathan, I think the general comment I'm just going to say to you, and we see this throughout public works, so I'm not sure if you're seeing this with other divisions. The upfront effort on projects is getting a little bit longer, a little bit more involved. Our projects are a bit more complex than they've historically been. We try to do a bit more in what we call the 0 to 30% stage of a project. We usually say 30% is when a project is like fully set, and from that point on, you're kind of doing detailed design. In recent years, we've had more public involvement, more public engagement, more upfront work. So we're kind of shifting some of our costs to that 0 to 30% and kind of reallocating what a total budget means for some of these projects. The second thing I'll bring in is, and this kind of one of the fun things with our profession is everything gets a little bit more complicated, a little bit more complex. Some of our technologies, some of the products we're working with. So we are spending a little bit more time up front with some of our design efforts and our analysis efforts before we go to construction. So we just tried to, better reflect what the overall split of costs kind of from start to finish on a project and where we're incurring those costs to develop the project before we actually start to build it.
What else? That team? John?
Thanks. So I just want to follow on the parking as well. I want to ask specifically, even more pointedly than Scott did for this data, and we don't want to wait another year. That's not an acceptable way to do this. We need to see, so you guys are going to more than double the funding you're asking for. So what I'd like to see is what assumptions are in that. Does that mean you're raising parking rates? What are you assuming about the amount of parking and the capacity levels in those parking garages relative to the past? That sort of thing. And so if we can get that before the end of the month, I think we need to rate these projects today, and I think we're going to defer on a few of these until we get some more data. The only other thing I wanted to point out, maybe Amelia can confirm if I have this correct, because I think this is important for people to know. Scott said something about other needs in the city and spending $5 million on parking garages. And while that we can agree or disagree about whether that's true, well, it is true. The point I want to make, I think this is correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, Amelia. Enterprise funds, whether you're talking about sewer, water, or parking, cannot raise revenue and then divert it to something other than their own infrastructure. So from that perspective, even though what Scott said might be true, you can't raise parking revenue and spend it on something else. Is that correct, Amelia?
So for the other two you mentioned, that is correct. Water and sewer, very specific utilities. But for the parking fund, we do transfer between $4 and $7 million to the general fund every year, just as an acknowledgement of all of the other effort that goes around. Like parking is a part of what happens downtown, and to contribute, and we know that a lot of that is supported by general fund work too. So parking is a little bit of a different flavor than the other two you mentioned that do have extremely tight rules around being segregated and being used only for those purposes.
So are there any limitations on what parking revenues can be used for?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that precisely right now, but we can certainly look into that. And if Public Works has any comments on that, please chime in. But we can work with Public Works to get a good answer.
Thanks. And so then just circling back to what we're requesting from Public Works on parking garages with respect to what revenues, what this means for parking increases and the capacity of the lots and all that kind of stuff. The other piece of that would be how much of this money is being peeled off for other things.
So where I will, and I know I just said I'd let Public Works talk, which I promise I'll do after this last comment, but we do have information about the parking fund that will include things like what are the planned transfer amounts, what are the revenues and expenditures. Those second layer down assumptions like costs and fees are something we'll need to get from Public Works, but I can probably put in the chat the most recent parking fund plan that will give you some of that information. I think parking will have to fill in sort of their thinking that led to that plan, but we can get you those high level. I'll just put it in the chat right now.
Just one last thing to simplify and clarify it. I mean, to get at what we're trying to get at here, if they're asking for $5 million and only planning to spend $3 million on that parking garage and $2 million is going to the general fund, we need to know that. That's kind of where I'm going. I know that's a huge oversimplification, but that's what I mean.
Well, and that's all information. So I can tell you right now that last year the transfer was 7 million, and this year, because of the impact of the pandemic on the financial stability of the parking fund, it will be, I believe, 4, maybe a little bit over 4 million. So that information we have, and I'll put the link in the chat. But now today, I think would be a good opportunity if you have any of those more nuanced questions, like what assumptions went into that for the parking folks that are on the call.
Can
I
ask
those.
a real quick question? What I've noticed is Finance and Public Works also calls it the parking fund. So what they're doing is they're combining the off-street and the on-street parking into one pool of funds.
Correct.
And I'm very curious to know what the off-street parking, since they've taken the CBR out of here for on-street parking, I'd be curious to know the off-street parking, what revenue that makes.
I think that would be a question directly to Public Works, because as you said, we track things at the fund level and it's all in one fund. So I'll get that fund information, and if Public Works has any follow-up to answer these questions, go ahead.
I will say, I don't have access to the chat. I don't know if other people do. So if you're trying to put something in there, we won't see it.
Yeah, and I'll just chip in and say that we can get you that information, Scott.
Maybe get the information to Neil that we can get it somehow.
Okay.
Because he has access. If you
And
get
just
it to
for
Neil,
full
we can get it.
transparency, that's right. For full transparency, as this is the public meeting, it is all just a part of the budget documents. So if you're looking at the budget book for 2022, there's a financial plan section, but we'll get it sent out.
Yeah, I can talk with Mark a little bit more, and then also pull together that finance plan to send out to.
Thank you. Okay, Eric, last question, then we'll move on to the next group.
Yeah, so I'm actually putting my video on. So it's partially commentary. As the Justice Department reminds us, street lighting is the number one most strategic action that a community can use to enforce public safety and to reduce crime. And looking at your backlog as well as the arguments that you use for street lighting, I think there is a much more compelling argument to be made on why street lighting has to take a higher priority. The funds that were provided by the president last round had money for public safety, and that money could have easily have accomplished all the street lighting projects that you have listed here for the next 20, 30 years. If at all possible, I'd like the people doing street lighting to start thinking through the lens of public safety rather than simply having light on the streets, because the real return on that investment in street lighting is public safety. Anyway, I will have a comment in our click report to that effect. And I just hope that Public Works will start tying itself closer to outcomes. And in this particular case, the outcome is better public safety. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Okay. We will move on to the next group, storm sewer and water infrastructure. Are they around, Neil?
They are here.
Okay. And who's speaking? Who's starting us off?
Hi, my name is Angie Kraft. I'm the director of the Surface Water and Sewer Division within the Public Works Department, and I will pause here for a moment to invite those themselves.
Hi, I'm Liz Stout. I'm the city's water resources manager, and I work within the SW004 fund, which is meeting EPA water quality regulations.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Ross Jernick. I am the manager of the SWS Business Group.
I'm Kevin Danon. I'm the engineer in charge of our engineering operations group. We construct and maintain the storm and sanitary sewers in the city of Minneapolis.
Welcome to you all. You want to give a brief summary before we start Q&A?
Absolutely. I'm waiting. Is Kelly Moriarty with us right now? So we also have Kelly Moriarty with us. She is a principal for professional engineer within our division and has several programs that we'll be talking about. So a brief introduction. So the Surface Water and Sewers Division of Public Works is responsible for the operations, maintenance, and capital improvement needs of the sanitary and storm systems for the city of Minneapolis. I'll begin by summarizing the storm sewer system and related programs, and then we'll summarize the sanitary system and programs. So the sanitary storm system collects, transmits, and routes surface water runoff into several surface water bodies throughout the city. The storm sewer system is critical for flood mitigation and ensuring water quality in our regional surface water system. Next slide, please. The 9 surface water and sewer capital budget requests were previously presented in detail. We have rankings for storm sewer projects and sanitary projects relative to each other by fund. A high-level summary for the 6 storm sewer programs includes program SW004 provides funding to support the implementation of the city's Clean Water Act permit, which regulates how we manage stormwater and protect our lakes, creeks, and the river. The purpose of program SW005 is to remove clear water from the sanitary sewer system. This program complements ongoing sanitary inflow and infiltration work. Fund SW011 funds the repair and rehabilitation activities on the storm sewer system to maintain services and minimize risks. Program SW039 funds our citywide flood mitigation program. SW040 funds the design and construction of the new parallel Central City Storm Tunnel, and SWPVR is a program that is utilized to fund storm sewer infrastructure improvement needs that have been identified and can be coordinated with paving projects. Next slide, please. Moving on to our sanitary sewer system. Our sanitary sewer system is critical for protecting the environment and ensuring public health in our region through the collection and conveyance of wastewater to a wastewater treatment plant. Next slide, please. An overview of the 3 sanitary sewer programs include program SA001 is used for the rehabilitation and reconstruction of our sanitary system. Condition assessment data is utilized to identify the high priority areas where infrastructure improvement needs are identified and made. SA036 is a program where we're seeking support for the continued removal of inflow and infiltration from our sanitary system. And SAPVR is a program utilized to fund sewer infrastructure improvement needs that have been identified and can be coordinated with paving projects. Next slide, please. And with that, we have our program managers on the call to answer any questions that you may have.
Katie?
Yeah, just a note to staff. I can't get the SW040 to open. It's just a note there. And then I was curious for sanitary and sewer staff or storm water staff. How has a 2040 plan and the the density along certain corridors, how has that influenced your planning for that greater capacity of people?
Take a stab at that. I didn't get to introduce myself earlier. I had a technical issue. Kelly Moriarty. We've been doing modeling both on our storm sewer and our sanitary sewer side in order to project future planning, both for population growth through the 2040 plan and also just with projections for increased rainfall.
You're muted, Katie.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. Awesome. So the maps that you have been showing us in a number of these projects, those are taking into account the expected, or starting to plan for the expected increased density in certain areas.
Yeah, particularly with the SW39 planning for increased capacity on the storm sewer side, and then in most of our sanitary programs, one of the benefits of having a formerly combined system is that we actually do have excess capacity already on the sanitary side, so it hasn't been an urgent concern for us, but we're still looking at it through getting more data and more modeling.
Awesome, thanks. And then the last thing is just a comment. I always get really excited to see the combined sewer overflow graph that you have, and that it's consistently, like, we've had 0 events of combined events for like a decade or more. So just kudos.
Any other questions for this group? I have a question. Maybe this is not the right one. With the Nokomis flooding over South Minneapolis, what are you guys involved with any of that? The overflow of the golf course and the flooding that's supposedly happening by Nokomis.
We recently were part of a team that worked to evaluate the groundwater in that area, and recently you may have noticed an article in the Star and Tribune that was published with the results of that analysis, and we were one of many partners on that project.
So anything happening there, update, or what's going on there?
So we'll be having a town hall meeting to present the findings and be available to answer questions that are specific to that. We have provided some resources on our website for homeowners to reference to do some flood mitigation and protection on their properties. And then there'll be some additional ongoing research that's performed. The U of M will be taking the lead on some peat soil modeling, and we'll continue partnerships with the U of M and the Park and Recreation Board and the Watershed District and others as well.
Thank you. Any other questions for the group? No question? Thank you.
I mean, actually,
Go ahead,
I have more. I didn't want to hog things.
Go ahead, Katie.
So in particular, I was looking at the Nicollet Mall is slated for storm sewer paving, but I know that that road in particular, or so not Nicollet Mall, Nicollet Avenue on East Street is slated for work, but it is not a project. There's no CBR for project reconstruction. So I'm curious kind of can you explain why you're doing that now when there's not going to be a full reconstruction, and kind of the decision making around that? Just thinking about, optimization of dollars.
The maps under SWPVR and SAPVR.
Yes, the PVR.
Yeah, I believe we may still have the projects that are last year and this year on the map is the problem that you might be seeing. just in terms of the 2022. I don't actually see the Nicollet Mall on my map though, so I'm not, we might have to look into that.
Sorry, not Nicollet Mall, Nicollet Avenue, East Street.
Oh,
Yeah, it's slated for 2024, but we don't have a paving project that is
I think
accompanying
that's
that.
actually First Avenue South. Just
Ah,
the label might be.
okay, that's right. My problem. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that your presentations are always very excellent. So I think I said this last year, but and I'm quite impressed that you guys seem like kind of on top of it. The infrastructure is obviously old, and you've done just a really good job of evaluating the age of the system, and it seems very organized in a comprehensive view of how to make repairs. So I wish other portions of Public Works would also sort of buy into this sort of concept, specifically around the sidewalks and stuff. But so I just say good job.
Thank you.
Any other question? No questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
So Neil, the fleet, what is that?
Well, we still have the water folks.
Okay, okay.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Annika Bankston. I am the Director of the Division of Water Treatment and Distribution Services. You just get me today. I'm going to try to field the click questions. I will try to share my screen just so I can remind folks what we're talking about. So this is from the website. And so the water infrastructure projects include water distribution improvements, water treatment infrastructure improvements, the advanced metering infrastructure, Columbia Heights campus upgrades, electrical service rehabilitation, our softening plant chemical system improvements, Fridley facilities and campus improvements, renewable energy at our treatment campuses. A couple new ones this year include our Southwest pump station replacement and our Northeast high service pump station. I will note the WTR 18, the Hiawatha campus will be discussed and presented, or you'll be able to ask questions as part of the, I believe it's the public grounds and facilities presentation Q&A, and I think that's next week. The other disclaimer I'll note, unfortunately, I think, so these are ranked, or excuse me, there is a ranking of project priorities relative to the water infrastructure program. So ranked on the order of a number of 11 projects. I will note our highest priority critical project, WTR 12 water distribution. Unfortunately, this link appears to go to a paving project. So depending on the time we have, I'd be certainly willing that once you guys are able to review that project write-up, we did try to make a very conscious effort to address some of Click's questions from last year. So it might be, I'm happy to come to another Q&A session once we make sure that Click has access to that write-up and a chance to review it. So with that, I'm happy to take questions on other about that project or other projects in our program.
Katie?
I have a question about the WTR 35 renewable energy at the water treatment campuses. I believe this has been in the Click book for a number of years, and I'm surprised that the PPA hasn't yet been finalized. So just curious about the delay on that, and if you have any further information.
Sure. So when we first started this approach, the intent was that we, as actually the water utility or as the city, would own the solar array, would actually own the infrastructure. And so we proceeded through, I would call it almost a conventional design bid build project delivery. with the anticipation that the payback period and the cost would make it justifiable, and that we would be saving, money over the course of the array. When we received bids at the end of last year, that in fact was not the case. The payback period was longer than the life of the array. And so we had to take a step back and figure out, is this going to need to be subsidized? How do we do this? Partnered back with Property Services and understanding where they were at in their power provider agreements, the PPA agreements. They needed more capacity in those agreements. So actually we dovetailed that PPA approach that the city was using for other facilities with our water treatment approach. And so now a PPA will be entered into for that first array up at the Columbia Heights treatment plant. So actually the memorandum of understanding, the leases, the power purchase agreements are in their final round of review. So we are really excited that we'll actually be able to be, starting to put shovels in the ground this construction season to get that solar array put in up at our Columbia Heights campus. Moving forward in the long run, we, in order to meet on-site renewable goals for the city, water with our pumping systems is a high energy user. So we're going to need to be part of that solution. And so continuing to evaluate what's the best way to quote unquote have, on-site own our own power generation capacity. I'm anticipating more PPAs will be in our future. I will caveat that we're always very sensitive about building things on top of finished water reservoir and on water infrastructure. So understanding, leasing and access to those sites is something that is a little bit trickier than, other greenfield sites, but something we can certainly work through. So I hope next year's click will have pictures of the new array at Columbia Heights. So.
John?
Thanks. So my question relates to Water 12. So it could be that some of this is addressed in Water 12, and as you pointed out, we can't see it. I emailed that issue to Neil, so hopefully he'll get that worked out pretty soon. So apologies if it's addressed there, but maybe that'll give you the opportunity to talk about it now. As you know, we had several discussions back and forth between you and some of us on Click and some citizens about dead-end water mains and the challenges that those present. Over 500 of them around the city. Of course, they each individual one of those only impacts a small number of residents. That's the one side of the story. The other side of the story is those residents are paying the same water rates that all the rest of us are paying, and they're not getting the same quality of water. I recognize that the water is not unsafe or anything like that, but there are some issues around it that I think tend to get glossed over just as a result of having extra sediment in it. So I'm just curious if you've addressed that in any way relative to those conversations last year, or what the thinking is going forward on that. Sure. To try to accelerate those.
Yep. So I guess to hit the high points again, we did definitely address some of that with respect to the water quality and all our condition assessment work that we've been doing in the distribution system. So one highlight, I guess, is that we're accelerating that program. We're increasing, up to 12 million a year, with the hopes that in the past we've been cleaning and lining 6 to 8 miles per year. This year we're going to do 13, and the intent is to ramp up that program to 20 miles per year and trying to be able to sustain that level. The capital appropriations, one thing, there's a lot of internal resources that we're growing that as well. So it's a balance not only of capital funds, but also internal staffing and resources for that. In regards to dead end water mains, it's definitely a challenge. One of the issues is you can't just line a dead end water main by itself without addressing the upstream area. If it's fed by water mains that aren't cleaned and lined, you're not going to necessarily solve the problem. That they basically are the drip legs. Unfortunately, I hate to characterize them as that, but if you get the concept, the sediment that's in the system will flow to them regardless. So what our current condition assessment is doing is we go and we perform hydrant flow testing. And if the hydrant flows compared to what their capacity should be or low, it tells us that there's that buildup in the water mains, that the water mains in the area are occluded with this tuberculation, with this rust buildup. And so what we found over the course of doing that condition assessment is we have some very severe problems in our system. There's what we call tier one parts of the area where we're not getting fire flows that we want to see. And so those are the areas over the next 3 years that are high priority for us. It's a fire flow issue. And by addressing those areas, because you're cleaning and lining them, you are therefore addressing the sources of that red water and that water quality as well. So, there's, one particular area that's a dead end main is going to get cleaned and lined this year because it's associated with some of those tier 1 areas. So that's really where our highest priority needs to be and is most prudent for us to move forward to. And we hope with that funding level, if we're able to sustain it, we're going to be able to address all those tier 1 areas in the next 3 years or so. By 2025 is our goal to get all those high priority areas or tier 1 areas addressed. Moving on from that, then we can start factoring in things like frequency of water quality complaints, understanding. The other thing we're doing with this is we're actually performing more comprehensive testing throughout the city, actually getting documentation, not only where there's we're getting complaints in, but also these other areas where we suspect we do have potential for red water issues and understanding what that bulk water quality is. So, we are going to get to the dead ends. And how we prioritize them in is relative to these fire flow testing. And then, there are other opportunities if there's, street projects coming, if there's other kind of infrastructure things that we can leverage to address them, we will. But again, doing them one-off by themselves doesn't necessarily solve the problem. You need to make sure the upstream network is also addressed as part of it. So
just a brief follow-up. First of all, I just want to commend you on having responded, significantly to this from a year ago. Bravo. And, clearly tripling the rate at which you're lining mains is the best thing overall for everybody, including people that have dead-end water mains. So that's fantastic. I just encourage you, to the extent that you can, clearly, having the right water pressure for fighting fires is number one, but to the extent you can also balance that against these, what you mentioned, the water quality complaints that are having a way to track that if you don't already, and that sort of things. Where I get that not doing one-offs probably doesn't make sense, but maybe it just informs, where you're doing the next 20 miles of line, that sort of thing. So anyway,
absolutely. Yep. Thanks.
Katie?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions on the 2 service booster pumps. So in the Northeast and in Southwest, so there's a pump station replacement. So these are 2 new projects. And I see that you're asking for funding in next year, and so really early years. Typically we like to see new projects have funds in out years. So I guess, what is your case for needing funding earlier rather than later?
Yep. So I will say that with these are booster stations, and right now, there's ongoing review of what I'm going to call preliminary planning. So it's not in detailed design phase yet, but it's basically taking a look at what some of these old booster stations have been doing for us, and what we need them to do. And then, as noted, both of these pumping systems have come up on our condition assessment as the pumping equipment's old and worn out. In particular, Southwest, the control systems are really old and worn out. Like, we can't, we're going on to eBay to find parts to help fix our control panels and stuff at them and things like that. And so really what we look at is our overall funding capacity, and really what we are comfortable with respect to our debt service. And as other programs are coming off, we put ones on. So when we look at what this debt load is, we think adding that relative to where the electrical rehab project and things like that, basically leveling out kind of our debt service, so we're not hitting spikiness. We originally thought maybe these would be absorbed into like WTR 23, which is kind of our ongoing, we thought these might be just some pump replacement projects that, might have been a couple $100,000 or something like that. But the more we looked into what is the right solution long term, we realized these could be multi-year projects that warrant higher funding. So the pumps, the interior equipment, we know we need to replace it, and sooner rather than later. And again, rather than having it kind of absorbed into that WTR 23, the need came up that it's going to be a higher level and warranted their own separate CLIC program projects.
Got it. And a quick follow-up on that. So the bond activity, we can't like drill down into this, at least that I can tell. So those would be water bonds and not net debt bonds, correct? Maybe that's a question for
Now
Neil.
you got me. Yeah, I know, I'm afraid I know them as bonds. Maybe that's a finance question. Yeah, it's not revenue funded. I know that they would be bonded. Yes, yeah.
Sorry. So this was for SW23. Sorry, which one were you guys on?
WTR 37 and
WTR
36. You know,
Okay.
they're bonds.
Let's see. I think last year we did split out the ones that were, I'll have to check into this, both of these. So I can follow up with you.
Awesome, thanks. Because I think what it's helpful for us to know is, you know, to me, when I'm going through this exercise is like the net debt bonds, like that's the thing that has the greatest amount of flexibility. And so like if there are things that don't have to be put in that bucket, let's take them out. And knowing where these two projects fit are useful.
Well, and the other exciting opportunity ahead of us is really understanding, you know, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act with the expansion of and I touched on this in my presentation a little bit, is really, you know, in the past, the cost of that money with the recent kind of, you know, bonding market, it wasn't that beneficial. But as more monies are coming into that is something we, as the water utility, are definitely going to be looking at, you know, drinking water revolving fund. Again, we're still seeking appropriations to go and enter into debt for this, but understanding what those opportunities are through the state drinking water revolving fund from those federal monies is definitely gonna be another an important source of funds for us to be looking at as options for us. So.
So I'm thinking that Katie's bonding question, there might be a broader answer to this that Amelia can chime in on. Again, I could be mistaken, so she'll correct me if I'm wrong. I thought if it's equipment, like water pumping equipment, that would be water bonds. If it's a building that houses that equipment, then there might be an option to use net debt bonds. But if it's specific water equipment, it's probably water bonds. Amelia, do I need to be corrected, or is that correct?
I think that's about right. I would say net debt bonds can be used on anything. And well, you know, not anything, but they're the most flexible bonds we have, I would say. And then the water funds are restricted to those use. So I think you'll see in our plans and historically that we have, just depending on the needs and the proposals of stuff within that water fund, used net debt bonds as needed. But I think sometimes we've used net debt bonds in buildings. Sometimes we've used just water funds in buildings. So I think the net debt bonds are the most flexible and tend to be sort of the last amount in after seeing where the rest of the priorities lie. But yeah, I think you're right about that.
And so the flip of that is, at least traditionally, you would not use net debt bonds for something where you could use water bonds.
Yeah, and depending on what the priorities are, like if there's a lot of work to be done with those water bonds and we need this net debt bond, like a little bit more funding to get a project over the line, then we may consider it. But I think traditionally we would look to the water fund first and then see what the rest of our financial situation is.
Perfect, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other question? Thank you.
So now can we have the fleet folks?
The fleet
yeah,
folks.
Good afternoon, CLIC members. I'm Al Thunberg, the Director of Fleet Services Division. And I also have Beth Held with me, and I believe Jeff Merguri is on the call as well from Fleet. Quick overview of what Fleet does. We're a little different than a lot of the other divisions within Public Works, as we're an internal service fund. So while we're not out there providing infrastructure and repairs and maintenance, we manage the vehicles within the city so that they can go out and do their job and provide their services to the public. We manage not only Public Works fleet, but also police, fire, regulatory services, CPED, and all the other vehicles within the city. So quick overview of who we are. As far as our budget requests, we have three, I guess, groups that we've put in. Fleet 01, 2, and 3. The first one being electric vehicle charging stations. So we are going with electric vehicles whenever we can. You know, there's it's still limited. We buy as many sedans as possible. We are getting into the pickup. We've ordered several pickups and vans. It'll be some time, of course, before we start seeing the large trucks, the dump trucks, and the various trucks that you see out there before they're electric. But again, we are going electric wherever we can. We've projected over the next 6 years that if we get everything we're hoping to get electric, in order to keep these vehicles charged, it's going to take a big investment. We have to provide charging stations at the locations where these vehicles are parked. In most cases, they plug in overnight, do their work for the day, come back in, plug in, overnight again, and be charged, ready to go. In most cases, we think we can get by with one charger for every 2 vehicles. That won't always be true, but we think that's about an average. So that's when we're predicting or forecasting our number of charging stations. That's what we look at. Cost is very difficult to project, but we started at $10,000 per charging station. Now, the charging stations themselves don't cost that much, but when you add in the cost of installing the infrastructure, it can be very costly. And that varies from project to project as well, depending on the amount of power available at the site or if we are bringing additional power in. So we've projected $10,000 per charging station with an increase of about 3% a year for inflation. That may be low. So our biggest request is the $3 billion plus for electric vehicle charging stations. I know last year it was talked about pulling out some of the requests for the fuel. We talked about that and it was decided that it should all stay in one group between, I believe, the budget office and the mayor's office. Wanted to reduce the number of overall groups we had. So those two did stay together. So in that area, we also have $100,000 request to upgrade our fuel island that's down at the park board facility. And again, that's, the fuel island's been there 20 some years. What we do is we put in new pumps. And the main thing is getting new plumbing in the ground from the tanks to the pumps to prevent any possible leaks and be ahead of the curve there and more of a preventive matter. Our other 2 areas that we're looking at are shop equipment. We have 2 primary facilities that are both in the area of 20 years old. And a lot of the equipment that was in these facilities to start with has aged out. So again, more vehicle hoists, a large tire machine for the big trucks, a man lift so that the guys can be on a lift when they're working up high on a truck. This was an OSHA recommendation. And also a new air conditioning charger. Air conditioning Freon is constantly changing to be more environmentally friendly. And when they come out with a new style Freon, it takes a new charger. So those are our shop equipment requests. And then our third one is a fleet management system. And Beth, I see you on your camera, so why don't you go ahead and explain that one?
So our fleet management system is what we use to manage the maintenance of our vehicles and the fueling of our vehicles and our internal billing and payroll for the shop staff. So, it's not a really old system. We upgraded maybe 4 years ago, but we are with the same vendor and we've been with the same vendor for probably 15 or 20 years. So we really want to test the marketplace, see what else is out there, and potentially make some improvements to what we have.
So with that, we're open to any questions.
Eric?
Yes, so my question may be best answered by the city budget staff. We have been requesting this breakout between the fuel and charging stations for about 3 years now. And this is the first time I think we've heard why. Well, we don't really know why there's an apprehension to breaking those two out for us to have greater transparency as to what direction our fleet is heading. So I guess that's a question for Neil or Amelia. But I have a separate question that for the team here. So in the fuel charging, you state that Excel is I guess you're signing an agreement, a partnership to have up to 70 charging ports. And my question is, could you explain the difference between different parts of the infrastructure and what exactly is a charging station? If charging stations are $10,000 a piece, how much is the infrastructure behind it? And is that the part that Excel is going to be offering to pay for?
Sure, I'll answer that question, and then maybe Neil can follow up on the other part of it. So our agreement with Excel was something that we started working on several years ago. And Excel, in order to promote electric vehicles, was willing to work with some fleets and provide the infrastructure if the fleet went in and provided the chargers. So Excel's part is to put in all the wiring, the meters, the transformers, whatever may be needed, and run it into our facility, or as out here at Curry in the parking lot. Then we have to put the chargers, purchase them and install the chargers. I do not know what the cost of Excel's portion of this has been. They haven't shared that with us. It's steep, I can tell you that. This at Curry here, for instance, they ran they put in a new pole out on the block over, new transformer, ran large power wires underground to large transformer boxes, then back across our parking lot and along the parking lot where we are going to install 10 level 2 chargers. So a quick overview of what a charger is. Electric vehicles, you can plug them into the 110 in your wall, but to get a full charge with just your 110 wall outlet, you're probably looking, depending how low it is, you could be looking at up to a week to get a full charge. A level 2 charger is actually run on 220 volts. And if you plug your vehicle into this, you can charge it up overnight typically, which is what most of our chargers will be. And again, so there we have some in the parking lot, we have some along walls in various facilities where there's parking, and try and set it up so that two cars can share one charger. The other thing we have here at Curry going in, which is takes a lot more power than your typical level 2 chargers, is a DC fast charger. So a DC fast charger is actually a 480 volts. It's a very large, about the size of a refrigerator charger. And in this situation, on a DC fast charger, a car can pull in and get about an 80% charge in 20 minutes to half hour. So when we have those cases where somebody's done a lot of driving throughout the day and maybe they're concerned they're not going to get through the whole day on their current charge, they can pull in here, plug into that, get a quick charge to get them through the day. And in the wintertime is when we expect to see more use of that. We're still not sure how much effect winter is going to have on many of our vehicles. We do know that the colder it is, the less your range is on a charge. We have a lot of Chevy Bolts, and they're good for over 200 miles if you're in 70-degree weather, so you're not really running heat or air conditioning. You'll go 230 miles about. But when you get into very cold and you're heating the vehicle with that electricity, or it's hot and you're running the air conditioner, that range drops quite a bit. So that's the advantage or the reasoning for this. And it's only one right now, the DC fast charger. The DC fast charger is very expensive. That was a $55,000 in a charger itself. The other chargers that we're installing as part of the Excel agreement have to be smart chargers. So they provide us a lot of information. They charge only during off-peak. And that was a requirement in order for Excel to put the infrastructure in. So chargers do range anywhere from about a very basic charger, which we have several of them as well that we haven't worked with Excel on, for just the charger itself, about $800. But like I say, there's a lot of other expenses in wiring, conduit, bollards, that get put in place to protect it. So that's where I estimate, while there's such a wide range, I estimate $10,000 total cost per charger. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does, and presumably you're including the fire stations and police stations in your plans.
We will be. Yes, we certainly will be.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Anytime there's a new facility being built, we're being, very conscientious of making sure that we provide charging into the future as well. But yes, we are looking at all departments moving into EVs.
Great, thank you.
John, and then Jeff, then we will break out after Jeff. John?
Thank you. I just want to piggyback on what Eric said. If I understood you correctly, you made the decision not to break out fueling from charging because you're trying to limit the number of projects that you're presenting to us.
I'm going to hand that one over to Neil.
Yep.
Or Amelia.
Yeah, I can talk about that. I've been trying to remember what our conversation was, but I think so and this is the first time we've really inserted ourselves into this conversation, given all the the questions that Click has and the formal comments that have been left. But when we change the actual proposal, like if we were to make this into two, we lose a bit of that tracking ability to go back and say, what was this? Because there'll be two new programs. And so in our financial system, we kind of lose that easy way to track the historical spending on this thing. So that was a cost. Also just want to acknowledge, as we move forward to adding more electronic vehicles, that some amount of flexibility is probably a good thing as we sort of figure out the right vehicles that are good to get in the electric format and which ones need to stay not that way. So those are two advantages of keeping it in the same proposal. I think what we tried to do this year, and what we can certainly follow up with more information on, is what of the bucket amount, how much is for fuel, for fixing the fuel islands that need maintenance work, and how much is for the green fleet information. And another thing that we've tried to make sure is clearer in the CBR is, what is the future of electrifying the fleet look like, and what's a budget proposal that will illustrate that. So that's what we have this year, trying to increase the information available to you about how much is for each purpose. But we felt like there were some advantages to keeping it together this year, just as fleet at this point in our movement to electrifying the fleet. This is my memory as trying to look it up, look through my notes from when we discussed setting up the budget this year. But happy to continue this discussion with Al and with all of you as we move forward.
And we did have the discussion when we first started this process, and then I don't remember all the details, but it was determined, to keep them together. But we did look into separating them.
Mm-hmm.
So just to clarify, this was a decision made by finance, not by the people at Fleet?
I'd say it was in collaboration.
Okay.
And I'm happy to take any comments for next year when we set it up as well.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about losing some history. I can just tell you in the past, we've had this issue, not frequently, but every now and then with a paving project or something, or I think actually it's happened on traffic projects where we've asked things to be broken out. And of course, there's always pros and cons to certain things. The main goal here is what you stated. It's to see separately the finances around, well, actually it's two things. To see the financial part of this separately, but also for us to have the ability to rate them separately. If we think that what they want to do on fueling stuff makes no sense, but we love what they're doing on electric charging, we have no way to do that right now when they're two projects, when they're all lumped into one project. So I think it's important that these two get separated out. And I think we probably don't want to take any more time up now about this, but it's a discussion we definitely should have.
Yes.
So just one quick follow is
Sure.
I'm
Okay,
looking
real
at
quick,
our
because we are running out of time, Al, we need to breakout rooms, and we have
Okay.
short time, so it's real short. Make it short, you can go.
just quick, in our presentation, we did have it broken down, but I don't think it was showed in our actual CBR. We're looking at $100,000 to improve this one fuel island next year. And that's all we have for fueling. It's over 3 million requested for EV charging stations, to give you an idea there. And as Amelia said, we're looking and going electric when we can, but we just know we can't go electric everywhere right now. So we have to continue to provide these fueling services in an environmentally responsible way.
Understood, and that clarification is appreciated. Thank you.
You bet.
Jeff?
Thanks, Chair Willie. My question maybe should have been earlier, but I'm just looking for offline information on the efficacy and utilization of the charging stations. And so as a person who had been trying to move to an all hybrid family for vehicles circa 2008, and typically being a user of Minneapolis municipal parking until I retired at the end of March, that anecdotal information seemed like there was less than perfect utilization of the facilities that are very costly. So I'm just looking for any kind of metrics or targets or utilization data on those resources, both for the fleet and for the parking.
Okay, so yeah, there is, so the traffic group, they definitely provide the charging stations for the public use. So it is a separate project from ours. And we do track our fleet utilization. We have not increased our electric fleet yet enough to the point where we've really done a lot of studying on our electric vehicle utilization, which we will be heading towards here soon. And we need to report to Excel on that utilization and amount of electricity we're using as well. So we are going to be working on that.
Hey, real short, go.
Comment, there appears to be a company that creates electric fire trucks in Minnesota. Curious if you've tracked that.
Yep, so I believe you're talking about Rosenbauer up at Wyoming. It's interesting you bring that up. Myself, Chief Tyner, Assistant Chief Van Vickel, Sean Olson, is also with the fire department, and also Margaret Kelleher Anderson and Brian Dodds. So Margaret's the director of public works and Brian's the deputy director. We were up at Rosenbauer, was it 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, and we did see their electric fire truck. That concept is a little bit old. They had a new one coming through town right now that was built in Austria. It's going to the LA Fire Department. There's a very large fire department show in Indianapolis every year. We were trying to get up there to see this electric truck that is going into service in LA. They were not able to schedule a time for us. There's been some issues. They've got to get this truck ready for this big fire department fire show. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get up there to see this newest production version. But yes, we have looked at it. I looked at the concept vehicle, which is a few years older. We haven't seen this new one, but we have also informed them that if there's an opportunity to work with them on something, we are very interested in doing so.
Thanks, Beth and Al. We appreciate it. Thank you. Looking forward to hearing more about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. With that, we have completed all items on the agenda for this meeting, with the exception of the task force breakout rooms. Members of the Transportation Task Force remain in this meeting, and members of the Human Development Task Force should be automatically redirected to a breakout room on Teams. If you get disconnected, please rejoin the main meeting and staff will get you to the correct breakout room. Are there any questions, anything left from the members and the staff before we call this meeting to an end?
Just to let everyone know that the Human Development Task Force has a hard stop at 2 p.m. though, just FYI.
Okay. If not, without any objection, I would declare this meeting adjourned at the conclusion of the task force breakout room. So our next meeting will be Wednesday, April the 27th. Neil, get it to our rooms.
Thanks, Willie. I'm going to open up the HD breakout room.
Fantastic.
Everyone should automatically move to that room if you do have issues, Neil, and I will troubleshoot as best as we can. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. So I think we have.
Neil, I see Mike Erlinson in here. I know he's HD, because he's my counterpart, so he couldn't be in transportation.
You know, I've been told both, but somebody can send me to the other side.
Yeah, we both represent Ward 7, and since I'm doing transportation, that means you're doing HD.
Oh yeah, sorry, I gave you the wrong advice. Looks like Amy's trying to go here too. So 1 second. Let me let Justin know.
All right, Katie, I just have to say that light above your head, a minute ago, it looked like a little thought bubble with just a dash in it. No thought at the moment.
Yeah, I've got empty brain space right now, apparently.
All right, so we have no hard stops, so we're going to go till 4:35. No, I'm kidding, guys. All right, so let's see. I'm just looking through here. I don't see anybody who's new this year. If there's somebody who's new this year, holler right now, so I know you're here. So everybody's familiar with this process. So what I traditionally do the first time we do this is I go slow for a couple of them so that people that are new sort of catch on to what we're doing before we've got it all done. But if there's nobody here who's new, I don't see any reason to do that if that's okay with everybody else, so we can just get this done as quickly as possible. Okay, I'm going to propose a couple of things. I'm going to propose that we skip, let's start with traffic. I think we should skip traffic 10 and traffic 22 because we didn't have the data there. The other side of that argument is we've seen these many times and we could go what we've done in the past, and I'm okay with that too if people want to. And the other one I think we should skip is PK 4 because they're going to come back to us hopefully with a whole lot more information about revenues and rates and all that kind of stuff. Does that sound okay to everybody? Would anybody prefer to just do 10 and 22 as we've done in the past? I don't think anything's changed there, but we could do them and then they could be subject to being reopened if people find something different when they look at those CBRs. I'm good either way. Thoughts?
Honestly, I'd say let's just do them, and if we need to come back to them, let's come back to them.
Okay, so I think we should skip PK04 because I think we're going to get hopefully we're going to get some significantly more substantive information than we've had in the past. But for the rest of the traffic, we'll do them with the understanding that if anybody wants to come back to 10 and 22, those can be reopened once we get the full CBR populated. All right, so with that, again, as I do every year, I'm going to start with what the rating was last year. There's nothing sacred about it. It's simply a place to start. If somebody's view has changed or there's new information, we can revisit them. I'm also going to do a whole bunch of these at one time. So the first thing is to give you a minute to just review the ones that we're doing. And if anybody wants to break one out for more discussion, I'll give a minute for that to occur. So I'm going to take TR8, TR10, TR11, TR21, TR22, TR24, and TR25. They were all rated significant under project priority last year and strong contribution to city goals. I'm looking for a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Anybody want to break any of those out? Going once, going twice, sold. The motion on the floor is significant, strong for projects TR008 through TR025. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Is anybody opposed? That is unanimously passed. Neil, are you keeping track of these or do you want me to do that?
I thought you were going to keep track of these.
I can do that.
Yep.
Fine.
Sorry, I'm trying to get people in the right places
Fine.
too.
Yep, that's fine. All right, that's it. We just covered traffic, so now we'll move to water. So we have the same issue with water 12. That's I think what we'll do is the same thing we just did with traffic. We'll rate water 12 now with the understanding that once we get access to that CBR, if anybody would like to revisit it, we can do that. Let's just start with water 12. That was rated significant strong last year. I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Significant strong. Zerko.
Second.
Okay, perfect. So water 12, significant and strong. Is there any discussion on this one? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to do the vote differently. I'm going to just ask if there are if there's any nays, use the raise your hand feature. Right, so this passes unanimously as well. All right, moving to water 23, that was rated critical strong last year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Looking for a second on that one.
I'll second it.
Okay, is there discussion on critical strong for water 23?
I'm just going back to,
I
like
can-
thinking about our reasonings.
I can
Sorry.
see you. So I was just gonna say I can see you noodling, so I'm giving you a second to decide if there's something you want to talk about.
I was just going to say, I think the rationale behind that was that this is the foundation for every other piece of equipment in our water system. And so that's why it is the most critical piece. That is my guess.
Passing dirty water through clean pipes doesn't really help anybody. Okay, so is there any further discussion on this? All right, again, if there's anybody opposed to this, please use the raise your hand feature. Again, seeing none, this unanimously passes. All right, let's take water 27 and water 29 together. Those are both rated significant and strong. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Significant strong.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Perfect. Second. Any discussion on significant and strong for water 27 and water 29? Hearing none. Again, if anybody is opposed to this motion, please use the raise your hand feature. Okay, seeing none, that also passes unanimously. Moving to water 31, rated critical strong last year. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Critical
moved.
strong.
Second.
Any discussion on critical strong for water 31? This is electrical service rehabilitation.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Yep.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, very good. I'm just looking at the last couple that have gone through on level of need, and what they're saying is significant, and you are saying critical strong. And I apologize, I had to step out for a bit, but my understanding is critical and significant are two different things, and I'm not sure where strong ties into this at all, unless that was something used in the past. So I'm just asking the question about. And
I like
you're
your
saying-
dancing.
What's that?
Sorry, you were cutting out.
Something happened to your sound, and it sounded like you were beatboxing and kind of rhythm of it.
Would it be helpful if I pulled up the definitions between those two?
No, I think I've got the.
Okay.
I think it'd be helpful, Neil, is if you pull up pull up Water 31. My recollection is basically if they don't have the power to make this stuff work, that's kind of a critical problem. But if Neil can quickly pull up Water 31, I think that would be the way to answer this.
And I also recall in the presentation last year that the electrical system was a mess. And
Right.
we wanted it to be addressed.
Right. Like 100-year-old house kind of mess.
Which section would you like me to focus on?
Why don't you start at the top with the descriptions of it for starters? Yeah, right there. Yeah, it's aged from 40 to 90 plus years. I mean, to be fair, Dan, I think you raise up, we are making some implicit assumptions here that it's possible they're not correct, that this is not, that there are backups to this, or that we haven't fully explored that. But my recollection from previous years is that this struck us as something that if they don't get this fixed and there's a problem, it has the potential to be a critical problem, not a significant problem.
Yeah. Sort of keying off. Weighing this more than the department even thinks. We obviously have the choice. I think the last three that are critical.
Hey, Dan.
Department, yeah.
Your sound is cutting out, and most of it said we couldn't hear. Try muting yourself and unmuting yourself and see if that does anything.
And I think there may be a misunderstanding. So the last couple were only significant strong and not critical.
Right. There's only been, I think it was one other that was critical, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that was the treatment, water treatment.
Right. And we discussed why that one is critical.
Yeah.
But, underlying what Dan's doing here, I think is a fair point. We want to make sure that critical becomes meaningless if too many projects get that rating.
Mm-hmm.
Can I call the question?
Well, you can, but I'd rather not do that because that cuts things off, and I think we're doing okay here. But I will say, Dan, your audio is not working, so I think we're going to have to stop this here for now.
Sure.
If at some point we need to revisit this when your audio is working better, we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So the motion on the floor is critical strong. Any further discussion? All right. Again, if there's anybody opposed, please use the raise your hand feature. All right, this one passes unanimously. All right, moving to Water 32. This is the softening plant chemical system improvements. That was rated significant and moderate last year. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on significant and moderate for Water 32?
So I think I can give some of the rationale around the moderate piece in terms of city goals. It's having softened water is a nice to have, and so it is not, it's not as crucial, and therefore we were also trying to, I think last year, create a little bit more gradation between the projects.
Yep. Any further discussion on Water 32 at significant and moderate? Hearing none. Again, if anybody is opposed to the motion, please use the raise your hand feature. Seeing none, this one passes unanimously as well. All right, we've got 4 to do here that are new this year. The first one, probably this would be good if you pulled these up, Neil, starting with Water 34. So Water 34 is the Fridley facilities and campus improvements. And as soon as Neil gets that one up, maybe we give you a chance to take a look at it. And then after a minute to take a look at it, I'll entertain a motion from whoever would like to make one.
Do you want me to read the project description or?
Can everybody read that? Is it big enough on the screen, or would you prefer to have Neil read it?
I can't read anything. So.
Oh, okay. Let's have Neil read it. Sorry, Scott, I forgot about that.
Project description, develop and implement a master plan for wise use of the Fridley campus of the Water Division related to personal workspaces, equipment storage, materials, warehousing, and maintenance shops to more efficiently run the business of the utility. Expected projects include renovations of interior spaces, 2 to 5 new buildings, improved roadways, stormwater management, and green infrastructure. I can talk through the purpose and justification too.
Go ahead.
The Fridley campus of the Water Division was developed beginning in 1925. The age of the buildings has generated some concerns and inefficiencies for the operation of the utility. Most of the office spaces are not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. The final plans for the expanded Hiawatha facility, Water 18, where our distribution and meter operations will be relocated, has limited space for weather-protected storage for their maintenance and construction materials. This storage needs to be provided at Fridley in addition to the storage of materials and equipment used to maintain and operate the treatment facilities. Security improvements are included in the Fridley campus program through both updated and expanded physical security equipment for access control and surveillance and more secure visitor delivery traffic routes and meeting spaces. Maintenance activities require modernized spaces for safe and efficient work. For example, we perform painting and coating of many of the specialized fittings and equipment used in our utility, our paint shop, and its paint booth, with associated environmental controls need to be improved. The existing automotive mechanic shop has limited access and functionality due to its location in the basement of an old building that is a candidate for demolition.
Okay, can you just scroll down to the funding chart?
Yep.
And for Scott's benefit, I'll just quickly tell you their first ask is in 2024, and that's for $1 million, ramping to 3.3 million in 2025, and then back to 1 million in 2026. So again, $1 million in 2024, 3,350,000 in 2025, and back to $1 million in 2026. So with that information, I'll entertain a motion on this one.
I'd say I move desirable and strong.
There's a second.
Second.
Any discussion on desirable and strong for this one?
So I can speak to my motion. One, they say the level of need is desirable. 2, I mean, it is master planning, so it doesn't seem like there's an imminent need. So it's in some ways, again, like a kind of a nice to have. It's better for long range, but because it is longer range planning, I think it adheres very well to the city's goals. Therefore, strong.
So I'll share a mild concern about this. I think it's easy, and I include myself in this, to rate projects like this lower because it's where people are sitting, no big deal. I think maybe sometimes it's good to think about it if you were sitting wherever those people are sitting and what it would be like. And if we don't have enough information to know some of this stuff, right? How bad it is. And like that paint facility, are people who smelling paint fumes who shouldn't be smelling paint fumes? They're not very specific, but I think it's worth considering that kind of thing. And Katie's point's fair. I think the flip of that, is in terms of long range planning and master planning, is they're asking for it. Well, 2024 is not. It would be ideal if they were asking for this in 2027 and it was coming through that way, right? So. When something gets a desirable rating, if people stick to that, I think the odds are something like this doesn't get funded, right? That's going to be enough of a penalty on points that it probably falls out of roughly the third, which is roughly what gets funded. And I would argue, and maybe this is what Katie's getting after, is, it doesn't thrill me that they're asking for money 2 years out. They should be asking money for 6 years out, or at least 5 years out. But, we can adjust that, right? We can say you ought to fund this, but you ought to fund it for 4 or 5 years out, not in 2 years. Anyway, I'll stop there. And, I'm certainly not going to oppose this. I just want to give that food for thought on this.
I agree with John. I think it should be bumped up one level.
I'm not opposed.
Should we call that a friendly amendment from Scott?
Yes. So make it significant. Oh, wait, no, important.
Important, yeah.
So we're talking important strong.
Yep.
Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none, once again, if you oppose this motion, please use the raise your hand feature. Okay, so 34 is rated important and strong. Moving to 35, can you pull that one up for us, Neil?
It is up. Project description. This program originally.
Wait, hang on, go back to the title up for everybody.
Oh yeah. So Water 35, renewable energy at water treatment campuses.
Perfect.
Project description. This program originally intended to design and install a variety of renewable energy sources to supply power to the water treatment and pumping systems in the water division. The installations would be owned and operated by the city. Design was completed on the first project to construct a photovoltaic solar energy system at the Columbia Heights campus. Upon receiving cost proposals for the system, the capital cost of the system would not be offset by electrical cost savings, and the project would adversely impact the Water Enterprise Fund. In partnership with the Property Services Division, the Water Division is pursuing a power purchase agreement for the installation under a current city agreement with a solar developer. Future projects will evaluate more solar installations at the Water Division's treatment campuses in Columbia Heights and Fridley. Work will also consider opportunities to develop wind or small-scale hydroelectric sources. Each project will require a financial review to assess the payback and the amount of upfront capital debt that should be issued. If the payback for projects adversely impact the enterprise funds, grants or other means of offsetting capital costs will be necessary.
Can you scroll down to the funding?
And for funding, in 2024, it's for 500,000. 25 is for 4 million. 26 is for 650,000.
And they're not asking for anything in the out years. So with that, I'll entertain a motion on Water 35.
And move significant strong.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion on the floor is for significant and strong for Water 35. Is there any discussion on this one?
I just want to name, I think they ranked it as important, not significant, but I also think it's important to for the city to like eat its own dog food here on this kind of on using renewable energy, so that they kind of went at it, assessed it, and said, oh, that way is not going to work, and went back and found another way. I think is important. So I'm supportive of significant and strong.
Yeah, and I thank you for pointing that out. I think that's important to note that, and as most of you all know, that's just one input that we take. And not only did they only rate it important, but they ranked it 10 of 11. That's just information for us to have. And I'd be careful about reading too much into their rating of important. We don't know, they do a lot of these, and we've seen lots of places where they sort of cut corners. And I think it may not be unreasonable to assume that they haven't studied in detail the definitions of those various terms that they're using, or even if they have, they may be interpreting them differently than we do. I mean, arguably with that, this is clearly the way the world's moving, and it's a good thing to do. It also, there's no loss of service if they don't do this. So if they're looking at it purely through that lens, they're probably right.
Yeah, I think
Sorry, go ahead.
part of my rationale is that the project is pretty far ahead. They said they were in final, negotiations or whatever. So like, just get this done.
Any further discussion on this one? Hearing none, the rating is significant and strong for Water 35. If anybody opposes this, please use the raise your hand feature. Okay, seeing none, that one passes unanimously as well. Just for a time check in here, we're a little bit over. It's 2:06. We've got 2 left to do and we're done. So hopefully you can hang on with me here. All right, Neil, are you pulling up Order 36 for us?
Yep.
Thank you.
So Water 36, Southwest Pump Station replacement. Project description, replace an existing pump station with one providing adequate water pressure to elevated areas in the southwest portion of the city. The existing pump station was built as an interim facility in the 1960s as a part of a long-term plan of adding a large volume water storage reservoir at the far end of the water distribution system. Since that time, the operating philosophy evolved and more reservoirs were built at a high ground elevation, which remain effective during pumping outages, e.g. in event of power failures. A small pump station is still needed to serve the southwestern zone of the city. The project also includes pipe and valve replacements, repairs, and modifications in the distribution system at the boundaries of the pressure zone. And then for dollar amounts for Water 36, and they're asking for in 2023, $750,000, 2024, $8.25 million, in 2025, $1 million, and then in 26, 27, 28, $0.
So with that, I'll entertain a motion on this one. Katie, I see you talking, but you're muted.
No, I was actually chewing, sorry.
Oh. Busted, sorry.
I would put forward important strong. I think it meets the city goals. The reason I would put important, because the need doesn't seem to be immediate. And just given the ask for funding earlier on, in earlier years, yeah, we'd like to see that in out years, but I think in some ways it may be a wash if it's just water bonds, because they seem to have already done the math and those will get funded.
Second the motion.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I'll chime in here too. I'm a little concerned about going important with this. I mean, you have a fair point, but again, same thing. What really caught my attention in the presentations on this is they're going on eBay to find parts, right? If they go on eBay and can't find and somebody has no water pressure, this is higher than important, right? You need to have water pressure, whether it's for firefighting or for showers or whatever it is. Again, I don't like that they're asking for funding in these early years, but we have another place where they get dinged for that, right? That's under consecutive years in previous. There's a category for that, and they're not going to get any points on that, which is meaningful. That's 35 points. Potentially, if it came in 6 years out and came through the way it ought to come through. So, and again, we can also adjust when we give them the funding if we want and say, yeah, okay. So
I'll take it as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so what are we doing? Significant, strong. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say about this before we vote?
Agreed on the eBay part, and also just want to add, I think taking the opportunity to right size the station also has longer term, just like cost and energy usage implications as well. So that's a good thing.
We want you to be able to shower, Erica. Any further discussion on this one? All right. Again, if anybody's opposed to this motion, use the raise your hand feature. Seeing none, this one passes unanimously at significant and strong. We got one left to go. This is Water 37.
Water 37, Northeast High Service Booster Pumps. Here's a project description. This project replaces the existing pumps and related equipment that provide boosted pressure to the water distribution system in portions of Northeast Minneapolis. The geographic area referred to as the Northeast High Service area is so defined based on the relatively high elevation relative to the surrounding areas of the city. This elevation necessitates booster pumping to maintain adequate pressure in this area. And for costs, Water 37, they're asking for $1 million in 2023, $4 million in 2024, and 25 through 28. They don't have any amount identified.
For the fun of it, Neil, scroll back up to that picture. Unbelievable when you look at that. All right, I'll entertain a motion on this one. For Scott's benefit, sorry, there's a picture that shows pretty deteriorated looking pumping equipment inside a room.
I move significant strong.
I have a second.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion on significant strong for water 37? Hearing none, again, if anybody's opposed to the motion, please use the raise your hand feature. Seeing none, this also passes unanimously at significant and strong. That is it, guys. That's everything we had to do for today. So we're gonna circle back on PK04 once we get hopefully better information from Public Works, and we're gonna have sorry, I'm not being very articulate here. Take a look at the schedule on whatever day we do paving. I think to the extent you can, plan on being well past 2 o'clock. There's something like 40 paving projects. It's not reasonable to expect that we'll be able to stop that 2-hour meeting early enough to get all of the work we have to do completed inside that window. I think we're going to go well outside of that window. So to the extent you can reserve an hour after 2 o'clock, we're probably going to need it.
Aren't we doing paving projects on the Friday with the 4 hours?
Oh, that could be.
I was gonna say, yeah, all that, the Public Works paving, bike pads, sidewalks, bridges, those are all on Friday, April 29th, and that meeting's from 8 to noon.
So even more so, we're gonna need probably a full hour, maybe even an hour and a half, since we're still online to get that. We got a lot that day.
Oh, we are online? Damn.
Yeah, I believe that's the last meeting before we go back in person.
So I would entertain, let's just take a minute to talk about this. You know, ideally, I think it's great if we do these right after the meeting. If we did that one a couple days after the meeting, like the following week, and could do it in person, that would speed up the efficiency a whole lot. The trick to doing that is we got to find a time that I don't want anybody to feel excluded. They can't make a meeting that wasn't already on the schedule. I don't know quite how we facilitate that. As I understand it, we don't have any issues around open meeting laws with this part of the task force meeting, so that part shouldn't matter, I think.
Yeah, as far as, I mean, and I think especially when we go back, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you can split off. We just have identified separate task force meetings that have to go on the calendar as task force meetings when you're working on comments. But I think you can split off from the main group and do your task force work.
So let me do this. I'm gonna take a look at the calendar, and maybe I'll send out I'll talk to staff and send out an email to all of you guys, and we'll see if we can't figure out something that gets unanimous approval. I'm not sure I'm comfortable doing it without unanimous approval unless whoever can't do it signs off on it. Because again, I don't want to change the schedule this late in the game and have someone not be able to participate. Jeff, go ahead.
I just want to say that I think this group's been very efficient in terms of clustering somewhat like projects and moving efficiently, not without thoughtfulness. But I'm happy to spend that time on Friday virtually, and in between times today, I've been doing my steps around my living room, kitchen, listening to this meeting. So I can't say that I'm, under the circumstances of just getting readjusted to walking, looking hugely forward to in-person meetings as much as I have always been an in-person meeting type of guy. But we always, the point I guess is that we've been very efficient in time in terms of these large groups of projects, and especially when the task force chairs look at what was done last year. We're not bound by last year, of course, but we seem to have the capacity to move pretty efficiently through the group ratings.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I try to make this efficient and thoughtful, and I think you guys all do a great job of helping me with that. So this is what I propose. Let's see how much we can get done on Friday, and in the meantime, I'm going to talk to staff and figure out where we could tack on to another meeting we already have. And I'm additionally going to talk to Jeff, because Jeff is clearly somebody who might be impacted by this if he can't make it downtown. And if we can get all that resolved, then maybe we'll have a way forward with this that avoids us having a full hour and a half after the already 4 or 5 hour meeting on that Friday. Does that sound good? Does anybody want to chime in with anything else or a different opinion about it?
Better?
No. No, it's still
No.
breaking.
All right.
Dan, if you have comments, if there's something you want to share with us, just send me an email or give me a call, and I'm happy to talk to you about it offline.
I'm good.
What is the presentation or the question and answer session next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday is Municipal Building Commission and Public Grounds Facilities.
Okay.
So we'll have nothing to do that day. From the perspective of what we just finished doing, I mean. All right, anybody have anything else they want to share, either on what we've been talking about or any other concerns? I think with that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks. Have a great afternoon.